The sky above Washington State was cloudless, crisp, and still. Flying solo near Mount Rainier, 32-year-old pilot Kenneth Arnold scanned the terrain below from the cockpit of his Call Air A2, searching for a missing military transport plane. He wasn't expecting company in the skies. Then he saw them. 9 strange objects, metallic, gleaming, flashing across the sky in a formation that defied logic. They moved with impossible speed, darting between peaks, wobbling in a way that Arnold would later describe as like a saucer skipping across water. But they weren't saucers, they weren't planes, and they definitely weren't supposed to be there. In that moment, Arnold wasn't just witnessing something unusual. He was watching the world's understanding of the skies change forever. What he saw that day didn't just make headlines. It gave birth to the modern UFO era. To understand how this single sighting sparked decades of investigations, panic, and secrecy, we need to retrace every second of Arnold's flight, starting from the moment the sky broke open. Prelude above the Pacific Northwest. Who was Kenneth Arnold? In the summer of 1947, the Pacific Northwest carried the scent of pine and aviation fuel. America was just 2 years out from World War II. A surge of confidence filled the air. Industries booming, skies opening to commercial travel, and a renewed faith in technology guiding the nation forward. But in the isolated ridges near Mount Rainier, Washington, life remained quieter, grounded in routine and rugged self-reliance. Yakima businessman and experienced pilot Kenneth Arnold, 32, wasn't the kind of man prone to flights of fantasy. A seasoned flyer with over 4,000 logged hours, he sold fire control equipment to law enforcement and was well respected throughout the Pacific Northwest. Conservative in temperament, clean-cut, and known for his steady nerves in the cockpit, Arnold embodied the post-war ideal of professionalism and practicality. He wasn't on a sightseeing trip that day. He had volunteered to help locate a downed Marine C-46 transport that had reportedly crashed somewhere in the Cascades. His plane, a small single-engine Call Air A2, was suited for mountainous flying, and he had made similar search trips before. To anyone watching from the ground, it was just another plane crossing the sky. Locals across the region had returned to ordinary life. The war was behind them, rationing ended, and veterans were settling back into towns like Pendleton and Yakima. Aviation was increasingly visible. Mail planes, crop dusters, and commercial liners flew more frequently above rural roads and forest trails. Nothing in the sky, even something strange, would have caused much alarm. But that month, strange murmurs were beginning to circulate quietly among civilian pilots and airfield staff. Unexplained lights had been spotted dancing above Mount Adams. A few dismissed them as weather balloons or sun reflections, nothing serious, nothing worth writing down. Still, there was a growing sense, unspoken yet shared, that something wasn't quite right up there. Kenneth Arnold didn't believe in flying saucers. Not yet. But that was about to change. What he would witness over the Cascades would ripple far beyond the boundaries of Washington State, rewriting how we talk about the skies and sparking the world's first documented UFO craze. The normalcy of that quiet flight was minutes from rupture, and once it broke, it could never be made normal again. Shapes in the sky. The moment that changed history, the late afternoon sun cast sharp light over the Cascade peaks, washing the snowy ridgelines in gold, as Kenneth Arnold guided his Call Air A2 through calm skies. Everything felt routine. Clear. Visibility. No turbulence. Just the whisper of wind across the fuselage and the rhythmic hum of the engine. Arnold was scanning the mountainous terrain below for signs of a downed transport plane. His mission, though voluntary, had him focused and alert. Then something caught his eye. To his left, at what he estimated to be about 25 to 30 miles away, a strange flash broke the sky's uniformity. At first, he assumed it was a reflection, maybe sunlight bouncing off another aircraft. But then, another shimmer. and another. Suddenly, 9 distinct objects came into view, streaking across the sky in a long, loose formation. They flew in, a sort of echelon pattern, weaving slightly, gliding with a motion unlike anything Arnold had ever seen. They weren't jets, they weren't birds, and they certainly weren't balloons. They moved fast, unreasonably fast. Arnold later calculated their speed at more than 1,200 miles per hour, something unimaginable in 1947 aviation. And their shape? Not round, not cigar-shaped. These were something else entirely. Thin, almost crescent-like. Flat, angular, what Arnold described as saucer-like, because they seemed to skip through the air like stones over water. That simple description would soon take on a life of its own. In his own words, Arnold later recalled, "They flew like geese, in a diagonal chain-like line as if they were linked together. But their motion was unlike anything I'd seen. They flipped and flashed in the sunlight. The crafts made no sound, no contrail, no heat ripple, just speed and precision. Arnold instinctively watched the clock, taking notes on their position and movement, desperately trying to process what he was witnessing. He estimated the total sighting lasted about 2.5 minutes, an eternity for a seasoned pilot whose training had sharpened his observational skills. He even used Mount Rainier and Mount Adams as reference points to calculate their speed and distance. What he saw wasn't a blur. It was deliberate, coordinated, real. As the final object disappeared over the southern horizon, Arnold was left gripping the controls, stunned and questioning his own sanity. He quickly landed in Yakima and reported the incident, not expecting the storm that would follow. Within hours, the media got hold of his account. His words, particularly the phrase, "like a saucer skipping across water," were misunderstood. Headlines shouted, "Pilot reports seeing flying saucers over mountains." And just like that, the modern UFO era had a name. But behind the sensational headlines was a man shaken by what he'd witnessed. Arnold wasn't looking for attention. He wasn't selling books or making wild claims. He simply couldn't explain what he saw, and that haunted him. As for the objects, they left no physical trace, no radar confirmation, no photos, just 9 shimmering shapes that defied explanation and vanished into the sky. And the questions they left behind would echo for generations. To understand how this singular event ignited global obsession and government scrutiny, we must now examine what happened next. The investigation, the doubts, and the beginning of official denial. Evidence and contradictions. The birth of the flying saucer. Mystery. What Kenneth Arnold witnessed sparked immediate headlines, but not universal belief. Local media outlets across the Pacific Northwest seized the story. Within 24 hours, newspapers from Oregon to Chicago were printing variations of Arnold's account, but the term flying saucer, based on his comparison to how the objects moved, not their shape, distorted the narrative. Readers imagined discs. Arnold had seen something closer to boomerangs. That simple misunderstanding would haunt the case and shape UFO mythology for decades. At first, Arnold expected skepticism, but what he didn't expect was how quickly his story would spiral. Reporters hounded him. Some dismissed him as confused. Others painted him as a reliable witness, an honest businessman, a credible pilot with no history of exaggeration. The U.S. military, too, took notice. Intelligence officers from Hamilton Field in California interviewed Arnold within days. They reviewed his sketches, his calculations, and his timeline. But their conclusions? Inconclusive. No radar data, no photographic proof, and no official acknowledgement of any aircraft matching Arnold's description. Physically, there was nothing. No crashed debris, no sensor logs, no secondary witnesses from the ground. What the case lacked in material evidence, it made up for in media storm and cultural shock. But the public wasn't finished. Just hours after Arnold's story hit the press, more reports flooded in. Pilots, farmers, and everyday citizens from multiple states began describing eerily similar formations in the sky. They didn't all match Arnold's exact details, but the overall descriptions, fast, metallic, silent, echoed his account. Still, for every corroborating voice, there were doubters. Skeptics offered a range of explanations. Some claimed Arnold had misidentified a flock of geese glinting in the sunlight. Others suggested atmospheric mirages or reflections from snowcaps. A few even proposed military test flights of unknown technology, perhaps advanced jet aircraft classified beyond public awareness. The Air Force eventually included the Arnold sighting in its early investigations under what would become Project Sign, the precursor to Project Blue Book. But again, no definitive findings emerged. Files were compiled, theories noted, but the case remained officially unresolved. Among the scientific voices, psychologist Dr. Edward Condon, who would later lead a major Air Force-funded UFO study, dismissed most sightings as misperceptions or hoaxes. Human error, he wrote, accounts for more mysteries than people care to admit. Yet other investigators, including early ufologists like Donald Keyhoe, considered Arnold's account foundational. To them, it was no coincidence that sightings exploded only after his report went public. That contradiction between sincere testimony and lack of proof has always defined the Arnold case. Even close friends were split. Some believed Arnold had seen something truly unexplainable. Others, uncomfortable with the attention, avoided discussing it altogether. For Arnold himself, the experience was deeply unsettling. He didn't seek fame, and over time grew weary of being the man who saw the first sources. Still, he never retracted his claim. "I know what I saw," he insisted, "and it wasn't from this earth." But what was it? Advanced military craft? Atmospheric illusion? Something extraterrestrial? To this day, no one knows for sure. What began as a routine search flight had become the most pivotal UFO sighting in modern history, and the start of a worldwide phenomenon still shrouded in doubt. But before we draw any conclusions, we must return to Kenneth Arnold himself, how this sighting changed his life, and what it cost him in the years that followed. Legacy in the skies. What did Kenneth Arnold see? Long after those 9 objects vanished over the horizon, the questions still remain. No official explanation has ever fully accounted for what Kenneth Arnold witnessed that afternoon. No radar confirmation, no matching aircraft, no weather phenomena that explain the speed, movement, or shape of what he described. And while skeptics point to geese, mirages, or misperception, none of these theories ever sat comfortably with Arnold, or with the many who believed him. For Arnold himself, the sighting was never a joke. It left him rattled, obsessed, and increasingly frustrated by how his words were twisted by headlines. Over the years, the experience changed him, not because he wanted fame, but because he couldn't ignore what he'd seen. In the decades since, his story has become legend. Yet it remains rooted in a single, unnerving fact. A respected pilot reported something no one could identify, something that should not have been there. So what really flew through the skies that day? Was it a secret military prototype? A misinterpreted natural phenomenon? Or did Arnold unknowingly witness something truly beyond our world? The skies hold their silence, but the echoes of that flight continue to shape how we look upward and how we define the unexplained. What's your theory? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, stay curious and keep watching the skies. Did Kenneth Arnold truly witness advanced craft unknown to our world, or was his sighting simply a misunderstood illusion of the skies? Share your thoughts in the comments below.